The impoverished student my mother sponsored pretended to be me at school. At the bustling school gate, she rushed ahead of me, skillfully slipped into the car, and shouted loud enough for everyone around to hear. I know we're close, but being calculative might hurt our friendship, but since we're not going the same way, you can't always hitch a ride with me, taking advantage of our friendship to have my family's driver take you home. As soon as these words were spoken, the people around me cast looks of disdain in my direction. If this had happened in the past, I would have flushed red with embarrassment, unsure of how to respond, but as luck would have it, I had just been reborn, so, right in front of everyone, I mercilessly yanked the person out of the car, climbed in, and spat in her face. You've had a few good days and now you've forgotten who you really are, your family's driver. Try calling him and see if he dares to answer you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. The clamor of the crowd fell silent as my icy words cut through the air. With a look of cold disdain, I glanced at the disheveled school uniform and Jane, whom I had dragged out of the car. Without uttering another word, with a bang, the car door was shut, and the driver was ordered to drive. Outside the car door, Jane, who had just reacted, Jane pounded on the door, maintaining her inexplicably commanding demeanor, demanding that I open it. Miss, this isn't appropriate. The driver turned to look at me, his tone full of hesitation. Not good, I sneered coldly. Jane wanted me to open the car door. Fine. I'd grant her wish. Seizing the moment she wasn't paying attention, I released the door lock. Just as she finally managed to open the door, I leaned back slightly and kicked it with a loud bang, sending it flying open with force. Jane had no time to dodge. As the door swung open violently, her head slammed into it before she was knocked backward by the impact. Lying on the ground, Jane let out a scream. I leisurely leaned against the car door, watching her tumble to the ground in disarray, her arms and legs covered in blood, her forehead instantly swelling. Hannah. After regaining consciousness, Jane shouted at me with all her might. Her eyes were red with anger, yet even at this point she still couldn't resist twisting right and wrong. It's not like I'll never give you a ride home again. No matter how close we are, you can't just hitch a ride in my family's car every single day. This is my family's car. Don't you think you're going too far? Me, going too far? I somewhat amusedly raised my finger to point at my own nose, then let out an undisguised scoff. You asked me to open the door for you, and I did, didn't I? It's your own fault for not dodging in time and bumping into the door. I haven't even accused you of staging a scam yet. Besides, since when can people just open their mouths and spout nonsense? You say this is your family's car. Where's the proof? Open your damn eyes and see. Do you even recognize what brand this car is? Just because you've worn clothes for a few days and put on a human skin, you really think you're a person now? With that, I stopped wasting words on her and closed the car door again to continue driving. Seeing the driver look out the window at Jane crying in distress, his face full of pity, my expression darkened almost instantly. Bill, don't forget who signs your paycheck. I'll tell my father everything that's happened these days when he returns to the country. Think about your son, rein in your overflowing sympathy, and don't pity those who don't deserve it. As the words fell, Bill instantly wiped the sympathy off his face. He used to be my father's driver. But because my father has been abroad for years handling branch company affairs, he was assigned to me by my father. As for his son, he is my father's assistant, and his wife is the James family's nanny who takes care of my grandmother in the old house. Their entire family is employed by my household. I know why Bill sympathizes with Jane. After all, since being taken in by my mother half a year ago, Jane has been trying to win everyone over in order to secure her place in this family. From time to time, she helps the housekeeper with washing vegetables and cooking, or chats with Bill while washing his car. Over time, the housekeeper and driver have grown fond of her, and out of pity, they secretly give her extra care. My earlier statement was meant to remind him not to forget who his real boss is and for whom they are working. Since my father assigned him to me, he should be wholeheartedly dedicated to serving me, rather than being distracted by those with impure intentions and insincere affections. Upon returning home, the housekeeper Joyce immediately came forward to take my school bag from my hands. Seeing that I had returned alone, with no sign of Jane behind me, Joyce's smile faltered for a moment before she quickly asked, Miss, why have you come back alone? Jane, didn't she come back with you? I didn't answer Joyce, but instead washed my hands and went straight to the dining room to eat. On the dining table, almost all the dishes were Jane's favorites, and the braised ribbon fish I had asked her to make for me yesterday was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Jane's favorite braised spare ribs were placed right in the center of the table. At that moment, I was almost instantly consumed by rage, yet Joyce seemed completely oblivious to the darkening expression on my face. Ignoring Bill's attempts to stop her, she continued to chatter incessantly at me. Madam might be home late today. Would the young lady prefer to wait for Jane to return before having dinner? Young lady, have you had another quarrel with Jane, really now? Why must you always pick on such a well-behaved child like Jane? Bill, go back and pick up Jane right away, so that child doesn't get lost again in an unfamiliar place like last time. Joyce kept nagging, though her words sounded like a question. Her tone was full of reproach. My fingers tapped idly on the table as I coldly watched Joyce turn and urge Bill beside her to go fetch Jane. Shut up, stop talking. Watching Joyce's clueless expression, Bill could no longer hold back and scolded her in a low voice. At this moment, I finally spoke up, asking her calmly, Joyce, where's the braised ribbon fish I asked you to make yesterday? Joyce paused, finally realizing something, and slowly turned to explain to me, well, I was a bit late going out today. And the hairtail at the market was sold out, so I didn't make any today. If the young lady wants to eat it, perhaps we could. Is our city so small that there's only one market? I coldly interrupted Joyce's clumsy lie. I left late. The hairtail was sold out. Why is there still pork ribs left? Did they really run out? Or did you just forget and don't want to cook it? With that, I picked up the plate of mouth-watering braised spare ribs from the table and dumped it all, plate included, into the trash. If I don't lose my temper, these people at home will never realize who the true master of this household is. Joyce, since you listen to Jane so well, from now on let Jane be the one to pay your salary. I won't repeat myself. Clean up all these dishes on the table for me. I want to eat hairtail fish today. If I don't get to eat it, you can just pack your things and retire early. With that, I turned and went upstairs. Just as I turned around, I heard Joyce and Bill whispering, what's gotten into the young miss today? She never cared about these things before. After making the call, exhausted, I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling above. I raised my hand to rub my throbbing head. Joyce was right. If it were the old me, I truly wouldn't have cared about these things. But at the bustling school gate, Jane beat me to it, slipping into the car as effortlessly as usual, and calling out to me loud enough for everyone around to hear. I know we're close, but nitpicking over this would only hurt our friendship, but we're not going the same way. And you can't always hitch a ride with me, taking advantage of our good relationship to have my family's driver take you home. As soon as these words were spoken, the people around me cast disdainful looks in my direction. If this had happened in the past, I would have flushed with embarrassment, at a loss for how to respond. But as luck would have it, at that very moment, I was reborn. In my past life, she impersonated me and deliberately humiliated me in public like this, forcing me out of the car, making me the target of the whole class's scorn as a shameless freeloader, despised by everyone. I wanted to publicly clarify my identity at the parent-teacher meeting, exposing Jane's lies. But who would have thought that my mother would attend in place of Jane's parents that day and announce to everyone that she only had Jane as her daughter? I cried and demanded to know why my mother treated me this way, why she wouldn't acknowledge me as her own daughter. But she just waved her hand and clarified to everyone, who do you think you are calling Mom? You're just the daughter of our housekeeper. We only took you in out of pity, yet you dare to covet things you don't deserve. What a sin! Her words struck like a thunderbolt from heaven, instantly casting me into the depths of hell. Taking advantage of my mother's favoritism toward her, Jane completely cast aside all restraint. Not only did she incite those who fawned over her to bully me at school, tormenting me to the brink of depression. In tears, I called my father and poured out all my grievances. My father, who cherished his daughter above all else, rushed back from abroad in haste, only to meet with a plane crash. My only pillar of support, my grandmother, also passed away on the spot after falling down the stairs and hitting her head upon hearing the news of my father's tragic death. Since I was still a minor, everything in the family was naturally and rightfully inherited by my mother. Thus, after inheriting my father's company and all his assets, my mother immediately adopted Jane. And to prevent me from being supported by the old-timers on the company's board when I came of age, The two of them conspired to fabricate a lie about me having schizophrenia and had me committed to a mental institution. At their behest, I was tortured to death in the mental asylum. It was just before my death that I learned an earth-shattering secret. All the suffering from my past life flashed before my eyes, scene by scene. I have no intention of making useless vows to the heavens. After all, since I've been given a second chance at life, my resolve is already firm enough. Those who have hurt me will pay the price, one by one, and those who truly love and cherish me, I will protect them, never letting them meet the same fate as in the past life. After what felt like an eternity, a knock came at the door. Joyce called out nervously from outside, urging me to come downstairs for dinner. On the dining table, my favorite braised ribbon fish was placed right in the center. All the other dishes on the table had been replaced, mostly with seafood I usually enjoy. Joyce looked at me cautiously, calling me young mistress in an almost ingratiating tone. I didn't say a word, nor even glance at her, simply sitting down at the table and eating with apparent enjoyment. The flavor of braised hairtail fish melts in the mouth, carrying a hint of the ocean's brininess, savory and sweet with each bite. I eat it bite by bite, though it's just a dish I could have had any ordinary day. It took me a lifetime to finally taste it, simply because Jane is allergic to seafood. Ever since she was brought into James' home, not a trace of seafood has appeared on the dining table. But why? The master of this house isn't surnamed Jackson. The dishes I couldn't taste in my past life, I've finally savored them in this rebirth, so starting today, I will fulfill every regret I failed to achieve in my previous life, one by one. When my mother returned home with Jane from the hospital after her bandaging, what they saw was me feasting heartily at a table laden with seafood. The moment Jane smelled the seafood, her face turned deathly pale. She immediately gagged, yet deliberately covered her mouth when my mother glanced at her, apologizing that she couldn't hold it back. My mother was already angry with me for hurting Jane. Seeing this, she couldn't contain her rage and stormed forward. Without regard for the fact that I was eating, she swept all the seafood on the table onto the floor. Eat, eat, eat. You've got some nerve, haven't you? How dare you eat after hurting Jane like this, and you even dare to eat seafood at home, you selfish beast. Don't you know Jane is allergic to seafood? What does her seafood allergy have to do with me? I looked up and met my mother's eyes. In my past life, she always told others that I had a terrible temperament, acting like a spoiled princess, unlike Jane, who was so well behaved and sensible. Yet, to win her favor, I kept a low profile everywhere, never competing or fighting for anything. Only to be scolded by her for pretending to be that way, scheming and manipulating. Since nothing I did could satisfy her, I might as well let her see for herself what my spoiled princess temper is really like when it turns truly terrible. Taking aim, I flung the half-eaten crab in my mouth toward Jane behind her. The throw was spot on, hitting her right in the face and startling her into a scream. I let out a cold laugh, looking at her with utter disdain as I said, "She's just a poor student begging at our house. Why should I, the eldest daughter of the James family, accommodate her? What kind of thing does she think she is? Giving her my leftovers is already showing her more respect than she deserves. And yet she keeps nitpicking and complaining all day long. Does she really think she's someone important in this household? She should take a piss and look at her reflection to see if she's even worthy." I leaned back in my chair, speaking with careless indifference. Though I was merely stating facts, Jane acted as if she'd suffered some grave injustice, her eyes nearly crimson with unshed tears, choking back sobs, but I could still see it. Beneath that veneer of wounded feelings lurked a venomous resentment barely held in check. How could I have raised such an ill-mannered thing like you? Apologize right now. My mother's voice was so shrill it nearly pierced my eardrums, yet I remained silent, my sharp eyes darting between her and Jane standing behind her, as if saying, "Was I wrong? Forget it, Auntie." Seeing this, Jane, who had seemed utterly humiliated, stepped forward, tugged at my mother's sleeve, and said with reddened eyes, "The young mistress is right. Even though Auntie supports me, deep down I'll never be like the young mistress, born to enjoy a life of luxury. I'm just an outsider in this family, only fit to eat others' leftovers." Jane, with that, she picked up the half-eaten crab from the floor that I had gnawed on. There seemed to be great determination in her eyes as she ignored my mother's protests and stuffed that half-crab into her mouth. I felt nauseated and tightly furrowed my brows. It must be said Jane is ruthless. To secure her position in this family, she would stop at nothing, even driving a wedge between my mother and me to gain sympathy. However, she got one thing wrong. The relationship between my mother and me never needed any provocation. From as far back as I can remember, my mother never showed me a kind expression. I used to wonder why a mother wouldn't love her own child. It wasn't until I was on the verge of death and learned the truth that I finally understood the real reason. Kate, the woman I've called mother for 17 years, is not my biological mother, Jane. My mother was nearly horrified and swiftly removed the crab from Jane's mouth. Seeing the teary-eyed Jane, she immediately pulled her into a comforting embrace. She didn't remember me, the culprit, until the other person had calmed down. You vicious little bitch. Do you think I don't dare to teach you a lesson? Look at what you've done to Jane. I'm going to beat you to death today, you beast. I'd like to see you try, just as my mother, with a ferocious expression, raised her hand high to slap me across the face. An angry shout immediately rang out from the entrance. In the next moment, my mother, who had been seething with rage, visibly trembled, and the impending slap seemed to have been paused in mid-air as if someone had hit the stop button. As the sound of the cane hitting the ground grew closer, Kate's expression gradually turned to one of terror. Grandma, seeing the person, I immediately became excited, bypassing Kate and rushing towards them. Grandma, I've missed you so much. Like a child, I threw myself into my grandmother's arms, acting spoiled, remembering how, in my past life, the death of my grandmother, who loved me the most, was indirectly caused by me. My heart ached so much it felt like it was bleeding. And tears uncontrollably streamed down my face. Oh my precious Hannah, why are you crying? Let Grandma take a good look at my darling. Have you lost weight? Don't cry, my dear. Grandma is here. Grandma will stand up for you. Let's see who dared to upset our precious Hannah. Seeing my tears, Grandma's eyes filled with almost nothing but heartache. Just like when I was a child, she gently patted my back to comfort me. Only after I stopped crying did she lovingly touch my face with adoration, then pulled me behind her. Turning to Kate, her expression instantly darkened. My son isn't home, so you've grown bold, have you? If it weren't for our Hannah calling today saying she missed me, and me coming over on a whim, I truly wouldn't have known when it became your turn to rule this household. My grandma pulled me aside to sit in the living room, facing my grandma. Kate was visibly seething with anger yet too terrified to even lift her head. Seeing her too afraid to speak, my grandma snorted coldly and slammed her cane hard against the marble floor, instantly making Kate tremble visibly all over. This matter was originally Hannah's fault. I just gave her a little lesson. A lesson? Who gave you the right to teach her a lesson? My grandmother glared and shouted sharply. She had always looked down on my mother's status and couldn't stand that even after marriage, she still disregarded the reputation of the James family in high society, constantly appearing in public. One day she's spotted at a dinner with some big shot. The next day she's caught by paparazzi dining with some fresh-faced heartthrob, in elite circles. Who knows how many people are secretly laughing at my grandmother and my father behind their backs, in my past life. I knew my grandmother had issues with Kate, so I constantly tried to mediate their relationship. Who knows how many kind words I fabricated about her to my grandmother, but in the end it was all thankless effort. I don't care what you do outside, but don't forget how you got your current position and status. If you dare to let my granddaughter suffer even the slightest grievance again, there will be no need for you to stay in this family any longer. And you, my grandmother's gaze shifted, landing on Kate's companion, Jane. The sharpness in her eyes almost made Jane kneel on the spot. She said fearfully, Grandma, don't call me Grandma. I only have one granddaughter in my family, Hannah. Looking at her, my grandmother's disdainful tone was almost palpable as she said coldly, I heard that at school you've been impersonating the identity of my James family's eldest daughter, haven't you? No, I didn't. Whether you did or not, you know the truth in your heart. My grandmother pressed forward relentlessly, leaving Jane no room for defense. Another cold snort. Jane's cold sweat had already begun to trickle down her forehead. After my grandfather passed away when my father was in his teens, the vast James family estate fell into my grandmother's hands. Before my father was capable of taking over the James family conglomerate was managed by my grandmother on his behalf. At that time, the James family had not yet achieved the glorious accomplishments it has today. My grandmother single-handedly led the James family through its most difficult period, transforming it under immense pressure into a thriving enterprise. Her methods and determination were unmatched by ordinary people. decades of decisive and ruthless prowess in the business world. Even now in her old age, just a single glance from her is enough to make one tremble with fear. Let me make this clear today. The James family has only one young lady. And in the future, there will only be Hannah as the sole successor. Some people who want to play underhanded tricks had better weigh their own worth and consider whether they're qualified to oppose this old woman. If I ever find out again that someone is scheming with despicable ideas, causing my Hannah to suffer, then don't blame me for being unkind to that person. With that said, she took my hand and stood up, then turned to the Joyce behind her and commanded, "Pack your things. I'm going to stay here for a while. I want to see who dares to cause trouble right under my nose." Grandma settled in at home, but by the very next day, all the servants in the house except Bill had been forcefully replaced by Grandma. Kate and Jane's faces practically turned green. After all, with my dad rarely at home, they had painstakingly turned all the household staff into their own people. Yet, the moment Grandma appeared, all their efforts went down the drain. My mom was so furious she could grind her teeth, wanting to throw a tantrum but not daring to, because now, she was almost constantly under Grandma's watchful eye, every move, every word. Nothing escaped Grandma's scrutiny. Jane had it even worse. She had always relied on my mom's favoritism to boss everyone around at home and school, but now, my mother can barely take care of herself, so much so that she uses filming as an excuse to stay away from home all day, not daring to return. Her position was already awkward to begin with. It took great effort for her to get along with the household staff, but now the servants she once won over are no longer here. A new batch has been deliberately trained to only follow my orders at home. Even Bill, who used to look after her a lot, no longer dares to have much contact with her after I warned him that day, afraid of displeasing me. Now, Jane is practically invisible in this household, no worries about food and clothing. But the pampered treatment of a young lady like before was gone forever. However, wasn't this actually her normal treatment all along? She was merely a sponsored student from a poor family by the James household. Why did she think she deserved princess-like treatment? As a matter of course, greedy as Jane was, she had thought about changing all this, and she had tried to please and get close to Grandma, but her little tricks couldn't fool Grandma at all. After having half her allowance deducted, Jane finally behaved and didn't dare to cause any more trouble. It was finally a peaceful period, probably the most comfortable time I've had in both lifetimes. Without these annoying matters and people, I could focus entirely on reviewing for the monthly exam. Unlike my previous life where I was constantly troubled by distractions, unable to concentrate on studying, that had caused me to drop from first place directly out of the top 10 in the first monthly exam after school started. This time, without any surprises, I still maintained my excellent ranking as the top student in the grade. After the first monthly exam following the start of the new semester, the parent-teacher conference quickly followed. Unlike in my previous life, I no longer eagerly anticipated Kate attending my parent-teacher conference. After all, I understood all too well how much she didn't want to acknowledge me as her daughter. On parent-teacher conference day, I was assigned by the homeroom teacher to stand at the entrance, collecting parents' signatures and guiding them inside. From a distance, I could already hear a growing commotion. Getting closer and closer to the classroom door, I heard someone say, "No way. I just saw the renowned actress walking with Jane at the school gate." So, Jane is really the daughter of the famous actress, the heiress of the James family's conglomerate. Absolutely. I even saw the actress holding Jane's shoulder, looking super affectionate. Definitely mother and daughter. The noise, mixed with sounds of surprise, reached my ears. The familiar click of high heels echoed from one end of the hallway to the other, growing louder until it stopped right in front of me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Kate and Jane standing before me, one with a look of disdain, the other brimming with smug satisfaction. Jane deliberately glanced into the classroom, her eyes landing on the empty seat in the front row where I usually sat. A fleeting look of schadenfreude crossed her face before she lowered her voice to a whisper meant only for the three of us, feigning apology. "Sorry, sister. Auntie feels sorry for me not having parents here, so she's standing in for them to accompany me to the parent-teacher conference." "Sister, you wouldn't mind, would you?" "Oh yes, I certainly don't mind." I pushed the signing book in front of me towards the two of them. "Could you please sign quickly? There are other parents waiting behind." I showed no trace of embarrassment or discomfort. After all, Kate isn't my biological mother. It's her business who she attends parent-teacher meetings for, none of my damn concern. Seeing that I was completely unfazed and unaffected by their attempts to provoke me, the smug expressions on their faces instantly faded. Kate clenched her teeth in frustration, signed quickly, and snapped at me angrily, "Just keep struggling here, me, heh, some people just love to pat themselves on the back." Kate's appearance instantly drew the attention of all the parents and classmates in the classroom. After all, as an award-winning actress, she naturally still holds a certain level of fame. Amidst the surrounding flattery and praise, Jane stood with an unusually straight posture. She repeatedly cast provocative glances my way, but I simply pretended not to notice and walked straight to my seat. As the parent-teacher meeting was about to begin, some parents arrived late, and the homeroom teacher entered the classroom. Upon seeing Jane with Kate by her side, the homeroom teacher's expression clearly showed shock before politely asking, "Jane, may I ask who this is?" "Hello, teacher, I am Jane's mother," just like in the previous life. Kate proudly announced to the entire class that she was Jane's mother. She looked at Jane beside her, her eyes filled with a mother's tenderness and adoration for her daughter. After introducing her identity, she then spoke with utmost sincerity in front of the entire class. "I'm usually busy on set, and her father is occupied with his business, so we rarely have time to accompany and take care of her. That's why I'd like to ask all the students here to befriend our Jane more often. This way, you can look out for each other, and her father and I can feel more at ease." Her demeanor was humble, her tone gentle and sincere, much like a mother worried about her own child, making it impossible not to be moved by her. "Of course, Auntie Kate, we always enjoy spending time with Jane. Jane truly is Auntie Kate's daughter, just as gentle as Auntie Kate. Auntie Kate, don't worry. We'll take good care of Jane and make sure no one bullies her." Everyone couldn't help but chime in agreement while, intentionally or not, casting their glances toward me. It was as if they were just short of saying outright that someone referred to none other than me. After finishing Kate's identity inquiry, the homeroom teacher scanned the classroom once more before finally settling her gaze back on me, noticing the empty seat beside me. She slightly furrowed her brows and asked in a hushed voice, "Hannah, where are your parents? Didn't they come today?" The homeroom teacher's inquiry wasn't particularly loud, yet still audible to those who were listening. Just as I was about to answer, I heard a voice from the back row where Kate spoke up, "Hannah, didn't you tell your parents about today's parent-teacher meeting, you silly child? No matter how strong-willed you usually are, you shouldn't keep such things from your family. In that case, your father is probably still waiting at the school gate and hasn't left yet. I'll call him to come up right now." With that, she took out her phone to make the call, while explaining to the confused classmates and parents around her, "Sorry everyone, this child's father is our family driver, and her mother is our housekeeper. I've watched this child grow up since she was little, always had a strong sense of self-respect. This time, she even asked me to attend the parent-teacher meeting in place of her parents, but I refused." I thought to myself, how could I possibly have the right to stand in for someone else's parents at such an important event as a parent-teacher meeting? Don't you agree? "Teacher," Kate spoke lightly, but every word carried an undertone implying that I looked down on my parents' work, that I was an ungrateful wretch through and through. Sure enough, as soon as she finished speaking, almost everyone turned to look at me with strange expressions. Some parents couldn't help but sneer, even refusing to acknowledge your own parents. "What an ungrateful wretch, such a daughter is worse than raising a dog." If I were her parents, I'd simply sever ties. It was almost exactly the same scene as in the previous life. In my past life, because of Kate's words, I was publicly criticized by everyone, my face burning with shame, wishing the ground would swallow me. I rushed to confront her, demanding why she would say such things, why she would treat me this way, when I was clearly her biological daughter. Yet she mercilessly pushed me away, claiming I was exposed as a liar, that I had gone mad, that there was something wrong with my mind. Had I known back then that this woman before me was not my biological mother, I would never have acted as impulsively as I did in my past life. Had enough. Amidst the disdainful glances and mocking laughter of the crowd, I calmly raised my head, staring at her without blinking. There was not a trace of panic from past lives in that gaze, only cold indifference and unmistakable mockery. "Jane, mother, as a public figure, you should be aware that your words and actions have significant consequences for both yourself and others. Can you take responsibility for everything you just said?" Of course, Kate lifted her chin, completely dismissing these words. Unfortunately, she was destined to be proven wrong. Everything I say is true. In the past, I only pitied you, so I turned a blind eye to you impersonating my family's Jane identity outside. But now, I no longer want to indulge your vanity like this, and I also want to prove the identity of my daughter. She is my only Kate daughter. Oh, how come I didn't know you had another daughter outside? Kate. As soon as the words fell, a deep voice from the doorway echoed into the classroom. The moment she heard the voice, Kate's previously smug expression instantly froze. She couldn't believe her eyes as she looked toward the classroom entrance, but the moment she saw who it was, her face turned deathly pale, and she could barely stand steady. Husband, what brings you here? At the classroom door, my dad and grandma stood with grim expressions, unclear how much of Kate's words they had taken in. Dressed in a sharp suit, his imposing presence made the classroom atmosphere tense the moment he stepped in. Among the parents in the classroom, one happened to work at James' family's company. Upon seeing my dad, they instinctively stood up from their seat and respectfully addressed him as President Lin. My father nodded at the man, then led my grandmother to my seat and sat down. Why, you are? Faced with my father's imposing presence, even the homeroom teacher couldn't help but stammer. I am Hannah's father. I'm here to attend my daughter's parent-teacher conference. The flight was delayed, so I'm late. Please forgive me, teacher. My father's tone was calm, yet it always carried an inexplicable pressure. What's going on here? Some parents who were unaware of the situation voiced their confusion. After all, Kate, being the wife of James' family head, had caused quite a stir when they got married. Newspapers and news outlets across the country have been reporting on it for nearly several months, making it widely known to everyone. Moreover, since my father frequently gives interviews to major financial magazines, his face is often seen in the media, making him quite recognizable. This makes it even more unlikely for anyone to impersonate or falsely claim his identity. Additionally, the moment my father walked in, Kate called out husband. Although her voice wasn't loud, it was clearly heard by everyone present. At this moment, the gazes of all the parents and classmates in the classroom were shifting back and forth between the two, everyone eager to know what exactly had happened. Why is the daughter mentioned by the head of James' family group me? And as his wife, Kate claimed that Jane is her only daughter. The homeroom teacher seemed to swallow nervously, then forced a smile and said it was nothing before starting the parent-teacher meeting. Unlike the lively atmosphere of parent-teacher meetings in my past life, this one was unusually tense, with my dad and grandma sitting in the front row. Both mother and son crossed their arms and frowned slightly as they watched the homeroom teacher speaking on the podium. The entire meeting felt more like an evaluation of the teacher's work performance and a formal work report. The originally composed homeroom teacher became so nervous that they were sweating profusely, standing on the podium looking like they were about to cry. It wasn't until the homeroom teacher began announcing the class's monthly exam rankings within the grade that the atmosphere finally eased up a bit. As the top student in the grade, I was lavishly praised by the homeroom teacher and was asked to share my usual study habits with all the parents and classmates as a representative of outstanding students. As the parent of an outstanding student, my dad was pushed into the spotlight despite his reluctance. The homeroom teacher asked him to share how he usually supervises my studies and some of his daily educational methods for me. After a moment of silence, my father rarely showed me a soft, apologetic expression. I'm not a qualified father because I'm always busy with business trips, so ever since she can remember, I've spent very little time with her. But I'm very proud because my daughter is outstanding. She has grown into someone far more excellent than I ever expected, even surpassing what I achieved in my youth. So to my daughter here today, I want to say I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry for all the hardships she endured in my absence, and I'm sorry I wasn't there when she needed companionship the most. Facing my father's guilt-ridden gaze, I couldn't hold back my tears. At this moment, my heart is filled with complex emotions, admiration and understanding toward my father, yet also resentment. I admire his ability to manage a company of thousands with such order and efficiency, and I understand that his neglect of me, his daughter, was ultimately for the sake of the company's many employees and the countless families they support. Yet this doesn't mean I held no resentment toward him. In my past life, when I was repeatedly disheartened by the unattainable love of a mother, or when I envied classmates who were picked up and dropped off by their parents every day, I would resent him for not coming back to be with me, for not being there when I needed him most, But in the end, all that resentment vanished the moment I learned in my past life that he had boarded the ill-fated flight home early upon hearing I'd been wronged, only to perish in the crash. Dad, I don't blame you. I held my father's broad hand. Perhaps in every daughter's heart, a father's hand is always broad and warm. With his warm, large hands, he held up the sky for me, a home. Many parents present were moved by this scene, as if everyone had forgotten the little episode brought by Kate and her mother just moments before. After the speech concluded, my father and I were invited back to our seats, and the homeroom teacher began to announce the rankings of the other students one by one. As the rankings progressed, the homeroom teacher's tone grew increasingly stern, and the atmosphere in the classroom gradually became more tense again. Finally, when the teacher called out Jane's name, she couldn't hold back and slammed her report card onto the table. Jane's mother, right? The homeroom teacher looked at Kate, her eyes filled with disdain and unspoken complexity. Having been a homeroom teacher for many years, she had developed a fair amount of wisdom. Naturally, she could see Kate was deliberately targeting me with those initial remarks. An adult intentionally picking on a child was enough to provoke her disapproval. Jane's mom. Jane scored at the very bottom of the grade in this month's exam. Just her alone is dragging down the entire class's performance. You should be aware that this is the grade's key class. Since Jane has been temporarily transferred into this class, I must ask you to put more effort into improving the child's academic performance. As parents, you should lead by example and not let your child follow in your footsteps by focusing on trivial matters. If her performance continues to drag down the class average in the upcoming final exams, I will report the situation truthfully to the principal. At that point, she may need to find a different learning environment. The homeroom teacher's tone was unusually stern. Kate's face, once so full of pride, now bore nothing but embarrassment. Beside her, Jane kept her head bowed so low it almost touched the ground, not daring to look up under Kate's murderous glare. After all, ever since she had transferred into this class through connections, Kate had spent no small amount of money on private tutors and intensive courses to help Jane catch up, yet her grades had not improved. Instead, they had steadily declined, sinking to the abysmal state they were in now. The key point is, in her past life when facing the teacher's accusations, Kate could still muster the courage to argue back with the teacher, but now, with my dad and grandma sitting solemnly in the front row, she'd have to be crazy to dare speak up in defense of Jane. Unlike their high-profile behavior in their past lives, this time the two of them behaved like rats scurrying across the street, slinking out of the classroom as soon as the parent-teacher meeting ended. I followed my father and grandmother home right after them. Next, Kate would have to properly explain to her father where such a grown-up daughter like her came from. The vast living room of the villa was eerily silent at this moment. Dad and Grandma had gloomy expressions, neither speaking up first. Jane was trembling like a quail, hiding behind Kate and shaking uncontrollably. Sensing the awkward atmosphere, Kate forced a smile and started spinning tales to my dad. Honey, I know you and Mom are upset with me. I didn't intentionally skip Hannah's parent-teacher meeting either. Hannah is the James family's precious daughter, with so many people doting on her and spoiling her. Do you really think she'd lack someone to accompany her to a parent-teacher meeting? But Jane is different. She's all alone in this unfamiliar place without any reliable adults. Since I'm her sponsor, shouldn't I take responsibility for her? Don't you agree? So you publicly slandered my Hannah as the daughter of a nanny driver in front of everyone. My grandmother was clearly furious, her cane nearly poking my mother's body in anger. Do you think Billy and I didn't hear what you said outside? Or are you trying to fool us like idiots? If Billy and I hadn't arrived in time, today my Hannah would have truly been bullied by you wretched woman, and your wretched daughter. I'm not. Seeing that my grandma and dad had heard everything she said, my mom panicked instantly. She hurriedly tried to come up with an excuse to explain, but before she could even speak, I cut her off with a single sentence. Grandma, in a way, she might not be lying. I glanced sideways at Kate. Certain things, at long last, could finally be spoken aloud. Hannah, what did you say? My grandmother froze for a moment before asking. I lowered my eyes. I said, there's one thing, she wasn't lying. Grandma, Dad, Jane might actually be my sister in some sense, I said, pulling a paternity test report from my backpack and placing it in front of the two of them. My grandmother flipped through the report on the coffee table with a stern expression. When she saw the section indicating a genetic match confirming the familial relationship, Her eyes instantly blazed with fury. "Kate, you've got quite the nerve." Watching as my grandmother's chest heaved up and down, it was clear she was absolutely livid. A few sheets of paper were violently flung to Kate's feet, and Kate immediately bent down to pick them up. But upon seeing the secret she had been trying to hide, concealed on that piece of paper, Kate stumbled almost instantly, then lost her balance and fell to the ground. "No, this isn't true, she fabricated it. This paternity report is fake." Kate frantically tore the paternity report in her hands to shreds. As if this could conceal the truth, she stared at me with a deathly glare, her eyes almost devouring me whole. "You ungrateful wretch, after all these years I've slaved to raise you. And in the end you won't even spare your own birth mother, just because I showed Jane a little more favor than you. You fabricate these so-called false proofs to harm me. What exactly is your scheme?" Enough, I increasingly feel that all of this is meaningless. We've already reached this point. Kate still remains stubbornly deluded. "Why bother? I know you're not my biological mother," I stated the fact calmly. "Besides, search your conscience. Only you truly know how you've treated me all these years. In my past life, they sent me to a mental asylum where I suffered endless torment. When I was on the verge of death from the torture, Kate came to see me one last time. She revealed the truth about everything. And that's how I learned she wasn't actually my mother. My real mother was my father's unattainable love. At that time, she was pregnant with me, and because of her physical condition, they decided to wait until after my birth to hold the wedding. But just a few days before my mother was due to give birth, Kate schemed her way into my father's bed. She deliberately sought out paparazzi to take photos and anonymously sent them to my mother, who was in the hospital awaiting delivery. My mother, traumatized by the shock, went into early labor and ultimately died from postpartum hemorrhage on the operating table after giving birth to me. After my mother's death, my father was overwhelmed with grief. He originally intended never to remarry, but couldn't resist the fact that Kate, who had a one-night stand with him by design, accidentally became pregnant and deliberately leaked the news while my father was arranging my mother's funeral. Because of this incident, the James family's stock price was affected. To stabilize the company's reputation, my father was forced to marry Kate. Of course, the price was that she had to abort the child in her womb. The James family could only have me as its sole heir. Kate got her wish and married into the James family, and with the resources of the James family, she quickly rose to become an award-winning actress. I was too young at the time to understand what was happening. And on top of that, my father didn't want me, a child, to be immersed in the grief of losing my mother right after birth, so he deliberately kept this matter hidden from me. So from the moment I could remember, I always believed that Kate was my biological mother. In order to secure her position in James' household, Kate pretended to care about me, but in reality, she never gave up on the idea of having another child with my father. But ever since she married into the James family, my father had been wary of her. No matter what tricks she tried, he never had any intimate contact with her again. Gradually, Kate could no longer keep up the act. Finally, in the year I turned 15, while my father was abroad busy establishing a branch of the company, she brought home a girl under the pretext of helping a poor student. And that child was not some impoverished student she sponsored, but her real daughter. It was a child she had with one of her ex-boyfriends before she climbed into my father's bed. To keep it a secret, the child was raised at her mother's home, passed off as her own sister's daughter. Jane was 2 years older than me, but to avoid raising suspicion, she went to great lengths to forge her identity, altering her age to match mine. This is also why Kate repeatedly favored her, and after my father and grandmother passed away in my previous life, couldn't wait to transfer her under her own name. Jane was actually her biological daughter all along. When did you find out? Jane's face was full of shock, even mixed with a hint of terror, but my face remained calm. No mother could fail to love her own daughter. I have a father and grandmother who love me, so I refuse to believe my birth mother wouldn't love me just as deeply, with all her heart and soul. With that, I slowly stood up, ending the pointless conversation, and turned to walk back to my room. What follows is no longer my concern. I longed to avenge my mother who was killed by her with my own hands. But back then Kate's actions were far too covert. If I were to accuse her recklessly, given my father and grandmother's way of thinking, they would surely become suspicious of me. So, some things are better left for my father to investigate himself. After that, it won't be too late for me to take action. My father acted swiftly. without a divorce agreement, and directly sent her to the so-called sanatorium. After all, he had given her one chance. If she would sign the divorce agreement and take Jane away, never to appear here again, he would let her go, but Kate refused. She would rather drag my father down with her than agree to a divorce. Lying on the ground, Jane let out a piercing scream. Such a pity. My father found out and ended up sending all those who tried to harm me behind bars. My father once asked for my opinion on the matter. After pretending to think for a moment, I said to him, "Auntie seems to have lost her mind. After all, you and Auntie have been married for so many years, Dad. The priority now should be getting her the treatment she needs." Right. My words made my father instantly understand. A divorce would inevitably have some impact on the group. Since Kate is so unwilling to divorce, then simply don't proceed with it. Family scandals should not be aired in public. Fabricate a pretext of mental instability and send the person to James' family's own affiliated sanatorium. This way, it can ensure that James' family's group will not suffer any losses. Kate was sent to the sanatorium to prevent her from having any chance to escape and cause more trouble, and to exact revenge for myself and my mother. A year after she was confined to the sanatorium, I had her transferred to a psychiatric hospital abroad. There, her prefrontal lobe was removed, turning her into a living but utterly mindless fool. She lived on like this, devoid of personality, suffering in a state of idiocy. As for Jane, naturally, I didn't spare her either. I had her taken abroad as well, making her a nurse in the sanatorium. Unless Kate dies, she will never be able to leave that place for the rest of her life. Isn't she supposed to have Kate as her beloved daughter? A daughter should take care of her mother for life. As for me, after this incident, I followed my father to visit the grave of my biological mother, looking at the woman on the tombstone who bore a striking resemblance to me. Her gentle gaze seemed to reach out through the photograph. For some reason, tears began to fall from my eyes. I think, if she were still alive, at this moment, I would certainly not have endured the same pain as before. I would be, perhaps, the happiest child in this world.